Alright, we're here making the station molds for the Lone Star 10. This is for number 1, and the most accurate way is to draw out half of one of the station molds, which is the way the plans are. It shows you the dimensions for half, and then draw out one side, and then simply flip it over the other way, and then you have it's symmetrical on both sides. And you can do that and just cut it out of like 1/2-inch plywood. That's the quickest and easiest way. You can also make it out of like 1x4 material, which is what I did here. I just did it this way because this is the material I had on hand. Just recycled some stuff. Hey, here's just a quick look just to show you the strong back that the boat's built on. This one's actually longer than necessary. This is one from a previous boat. But all that matters is that you just have something long enough and level and straight. Got a string stretched down the middle as a center line, and so we'll just measure and put up the station molds on the strong back. All the molds set up, the stem and transom in place. And this is just setting up the very first prototype. Coming out real well. We got the batten on, and it just came out really nice. So here's the stem. This will still have to get beveled. We'll be doing that soon, and then we'll also be beveling doing a little bit of framing on the transom. But there's your basic setup. Okay, here's our transom on the frame, ready to go. This one's 2 layers of 6mm plywood epoxy together, and then I added the transom framing around the edges. It's just the plywood by itself is a little thin to put a fastening in, so this will give a more secure way to fasten the planking to the transom. Here it is on the jig. You can see the framing on the edges. It's important to stop this where the knee is going to go. Eventually the transom will be curved. Basically, we just want to get those divided by 3. Do that along the whole length of the boat, and put your rib bands on, and then adjust it to where they look good, and make sure you don't have any bumps or hollows, that everything looks pretty. Okay, here we are ready to get the first plank, the garboard, and this is where a lot of people struggle with. Kind of compare it to a tailor or a dressmaker uses like a dressmaker's form. The clothes have the right cut, they'll lie properly. It's the same way with the planking. What you're really trying to avoid is what's called edge set, which if I took this plank and I just put it straight along here, see how it would bow out from the form and it wouldn't lie flat. You basically have practice, it gets easier, but by moving this around we can actually get it to where it's lying flat. And all I'm going to do, once we have this plank line on the rib bands where we want it, The only reason it's not up here is there's some screws sticking out. I'm just gonna come along and I'm gonna trace along both of these rib bands the full length, and that's gonna give me my shape. To where it will be in the boat, it actually will look better instead of having it at an angle or whatever. And 1.5 inches is my scarf length. That's what you want to use for 6mm plywood. And then I have this large piece. I'm going to cut the scarf on it and glue it on there. And I'm going to leave this large, and then I'll come back and trim it after everything's glued. Anytime you can leave anything bigger and trim off later, it's always better. It's a little bit hard to do this and to hold the camera at the same time, but you're just going to plane till this is a feather edge all the way back to that line. What I actually do is normally I'll use a belt sander, especially on thin plywood like this. It doesn't take very long at all just to use a belt sander to take it down to that angle, and I use like 80 grit paper, that way it still has enough, rough enough that the epoxy sticks well. Okay, here's the finished scarf. If you cut both your panels to the same length or same ratio, and they're both perfectly flat, you can put a straight edge on here to see how flat you've got them. If you get them flat, come down to just almost a paper edge down here, but try and be careful to leave that. Depends also, I want to varnish this boat, so it's going to show on the inside. But that's it, it's ready to glue up.